The pattern we are witnessing right now is one of the history books. And if you think winter is starting to wind down, you really need to start paying attention to what I am about to show you. Right now, an Arctic blast is shattering temperature records across the eastern United States. Wind chills are already 40 below zero in parts of the Northeast. But that's not the story. The story is what's coming. Multiple winter storms are lined up through the first full week of February, like planes waiting to land. A stronger clipper arrives Friday, reinforcing dangerously cold Arctic air across the Great Lakes and Northeast. Wind chills could plunge to 40 below zero again by Saturday morning. And looking further out, the signals are growing for a potentially major winter storm somewhere in the central and eastern United States during the third week of February. But here's what they're not telling you. The polar vortex is splitting, not weakening, splitting into two distinct circulation centers. And when that happens, the cold doesn't just visit, it stays. The pattern we're locked into right now is absolutely relentless. And if you think winter is winding down, you need to pay close attention to what I'm about to show you. If this sounds like the winter that never ends, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because what's building in the atmosphere through mid-February could make everything we've seen so far look like a warm-up. Drop a comment with where you're watching from, what your current temperature is, and how much snow you've already received this season. Let's start with what's happening right now, because the cold air flooding across the United States is absolutely historic. Let me start with where we stand right now, because the snowfall this season has been remarkable. The Great Lakes and Northeast have seen tremendous amounts of snow. It was a slow start across the Northeast, but January absolutely made up for lost time. We also witnessed something rare with significant southern snow across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and the Carolinas. Eastern North Carolina picked up over a foot of snow from the most recent winter storm, which is extraordinary for that region. But it's not just the snow. It's the cold. Right now, this evening, wind chills are already below zero across the eastern Ohio Valley, down the Appalachians, through West Virginia, into North Carolina, and across New England. The heavy snow on the ground from recent winter storms is acting like a freezer, keeping temperatures suppressed and wind chills dangerous. Monday morning, wind chills will start below zero across southern Canada and portions of the Northeast. Make sure you're covering any exposed skin before heading outside. Frostbite can occur in as little as 30 to 45 minutes when wind chills drop to 10 or 20 below zero. This is serious cold that demands respect. Looking at the northern hemisphere snow cover, the Arctic Circle is completely ice-covered at this point. Hudson Bay and much of the Canadian lakes are frozen over. Even the Great Lakes, especially Lake Erie, have developed significant ice coverage, which is actually limiting lake effect snow production. When the lakes ice over, there's less open water to fuel those intense lake effect bands. The atmospheric pattern driving all of this is a classic ridge trough setup. We have a massive ridge in the west, bringing mild Pacific air to that region. In the east, we have a persistent trough that continues funneling Arctic air into the eastern seaboard. This eastern trough is going to sit in place for several days, which means we'll see active weather at times through midweek. The western ridge will eventually win out, but not really until we approach next weekend. In the meantime, energy is going to dive southeast from Canada and into the eastern United States, bringing additional snow chances as we push through late week into next weekend. Here's the day-by-day breakdown, because understanding when things happen helps you plan. Monday features snow flurries and snow showers revolving across portions of southern Canada and the Great Lakes. It's nuisance level stuff, not a major event, but enough to create slick spots on untreated roads. Tuesday evening brings a bit more organization, as we could see snow developing across Kentucky, West Virginia, and southern Ohio. Again, this isn't a blockbuster snow event by any stretch, but it will be enough to whiten the ground and create some travel headaches. Cities like Charleston, West Virginia, Lexington and Louisville in Kentucky, Columbus and Cincinnati in Ohio, and Richmond and Roanoke in Virginia should all monitor conditions Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning. Wednesday looks to be the quietest day of the week, offering a brief respite before the next system arrives. Thursday and Friday is when things ramp up significantly. A clipper system drops down from Canada with a strong 989 millibar low positioned over Hudson Bay and eastern Canada. This system is going to drag an Arctic front through the region, which accomplishes two things. First, it brings accumulating snow to the Great Lakes and portions of the Northeast. Second, And perhaps more importantly, it reinforces another shot of cold air that's going to make next weekend feel like the depths of January all over again. Now, I need to talk about the cold because what's coming next weekend is going to be brutal. That Arctic front diving southeast out of Canada is going to deliver dangerously cold conditions. Monday afternoon, wind chills will be mostly below zero in southern Canada, with single digits across the Midwest and Northeast. That's actually an improvement from where we are now. Tuesday morning, we welcome back sub-zero wind chills into North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. We're talking 10 to 20 below zero. Make sure you're bundling up if you have to be outside. Wednesday morning, same story. Thursday morning, same story again. The cold just doesn't let up, but Saturday morning, February 7th, is when things get truly dangerous. Upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine could see wind chills plummeting to 40 below zero again. Quebec and Ontario in Canada could see 50 below. If you live in Southeast Canada, this is déjà vu from the recent Arctic outbreak. Another round of life-threatening cold is on the way. Looking at snowfall accumulations between now and Saturday morning, February 7th, we could see several inches pile up across parts of Canada, the Great Lakes, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, along the Appalachians and into the Northeast. Further west, the ridge is going to limit snowfall chances across the Rockies until late next weekend. Let me put this in perspective. When wind chills hit 40 below zero, exposed skin can freeze in less than 10 minutes. This isn't just uncomfortable. This is the kind of cold that kills. Hypothermia sets in quickly. Cars won't start, pipes burst, power grids strain under the load of everyone cranking their heat to maximum. And this isn't a quick shot of cold that moves through in 24 hours. This is sustained, multi-day Arctic air that settles in and refuses to leave. The kind of cold that makes you question why humans ever decided to live this far north. For those of you in the affected areas, now is the time to prepare. Check your heating system. Make sure you have backup heat sources. Stock up on food and water in case you lose power. Charge all your devices. Check on elderly neighbors who might be vulnerable. This is not the time to be caught unprepared, because when the cold hits this hard, mistakes become deadly very quickly. Now let's talk about what's driving this pattern and why it's not going to break anytime soon. Looking at the bigger picture, and what's driving this pattern, the stratospheric polar vortex is splitting. By midweek, we'll have one lobe positioned over Europe and Asia, and another lobe over North America. When the polar vortex splits like this, cold air from the stratosphere begins leaking down toward the surface. This process takes about 1 to 2 weeks to fully manifest at ground level. What this means is that by mid to late February, we're going to see another significant cold air outbreak. I predicted this back in mid-January. After a 7 to 10-day period of intense Arctic air, you typically see a moderating trend, a spike in temperatures that provides some relief. We're approaching that moderation now, and you can see it in the forecasts, with milder temperatures working into the middle of the country during the second week of February, roughly February 8th through the 15th. But don't get comfortable. Look at the week of February 15th through the 22nd. The Arctic air is reloading in Alaska and Western Canada, and it's going to come flooding back into the eastern United States. By the last week of February, the 22nd through the 28th, we're right back in the deep freeze across the east, while the west turns mild again. Let me explain what a polar vortex split actually means, because this is critical to understanding why this pattern is so persistent. The polar vortex is a large area of low pressure and cold air that surrounds both poles. It exists year-round but is strongest during winter. When it's strong and stable, it acts like a container, keeping the coldest air locked up near the poles. But when it splits, you essentially have two smaller vortices instead of one large one. These split pieces can wander away from the pole, sometimes positioning themselves directly over North America or Europe. And when that happens, the cold doesn't just visit for a few days. It camps out for weeks. The last major vortex split occurred in January 2021, and it led to the catastrophic winter storm that hit Texas and the southern United States. Power grids failed. Pipes burst. People died. That event demonstrated just how vulnerable our infrastructure is to sustained extreme cold, especially in regions that don't typically experience such conditions. We're looking at a similar setup now. The split is happening. The cold air is being displaced southward, and the pattern is locking in for an extended period. This temperature pattern has huge implications for snowfall potential through the rest of February. During the second week of the month, February 8th through the 15th, expect more snow across the Pacific Northwest, especially at higher elevations. The Ohio Valley could see a nuisance-type snow event around the middle of the month, but it's after mid-month where things get really interesting. From February 15th through the 22nd, we're pinpointing areas from the Central Plains through the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and especially the Northeast for significant winter weather. The track we're watching runs roughly from eastern Colorado all the way to Maine, and everywhere in between is fair game. The signal is growing for a more significant winter storm during this time frame. It could be a big one. Let me show you what the models are indicating. The pattern setting up for mid-February features a strong southern stream system that could interact with northern stream energy. When you get that kind of phasing, when energy from two different branches of the jet stream comes together, you can get explosive storm development. The European model is showing a deep trough digging into the central United States around February 15th to 17th. The GFS model is showing something similar, though with slightly different timing. When multiple models agree on the general pattern, even if they differ on specifics, that increases confidence that something significant is likely to happen. The cold air will be firmly in place. We're not talking about a marginal setup where temperatures hover near freezing and you get mixing issues. We're talking about a deep, entrenched Arctic air mass that will support all snow from the Central Plains through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. Moisture will be available from the Gulf of Mexico. The storm track looks favorable for a major snow event affecting a huge swath of the country. And the timing, mid-February, is historically when some of the biggest winter storms occur. I'm not going to give you specific snow totals for a storm that's still 2 weeks away. The details will change, the exact track will shift, but the pattern is there. The ingredients are aligning, and everyone from Denver to Boston needs to be paying attention. This could be the storm of the season for many areas, the kind of storm that shuts down cities, closes schools for days, and creates travel nightmares, the kind of storm people remember and talk about for years. Then as we push into the final week of February, the 22nd through the 28th, the storm track looks to suppress further south. The Carolinas could get back into the snowfall game during this period. The Mid-Atlantic and Northeast remain active as well. This is significant because the Carolinas have already seen extraordinary snow this season. Eastern North Carolina picked up over a foot from a recent storm, which is almost unheard of for that region. If the late February pattern brings another significant system through the area, we could be looking at a truly historic winter for the Southeast. The pattern that allows snow in the Carolinas requires very specific conditions. You need cold air damming, where Arctic air gets trapped against the Appalachian Mountains and creates a shallow layer of sub-freezing temperatures at the surface. You need moisture from the Atlantic or Gulf. And you need a storm system that tracks along the boundary between the cold and warm air. All of those ingredients look like they could come together in late February. The models are showing a pattern that favors coastal storm development, with the track positioned just right to bring significant snow to areas from the Carolinas through the mid-Atlantic. Cities like Raleigh, Charlotte, Richmond, and Washington, D.C. need to be watching this closely. These are areas that can handle a few inches of snow, but that get completely paralyzed by major accumulations. And if the late February storm materializes as the models suggest, we could be talking about significant accumulations. The economic impact of snow in the South is disproportionate to the actual snowfall amounts. These regions don't have the infrastructure to handle it. They don't have fleets of snowplows. They don't have salt reserves. Roads don't get treated. And when snow falls, everything shuts down. A major snow event in late February, after schools and businesses have already dealt with disruptions earlier in the winter, could have serious economic consequences. Supply chains get disrupted. Workers can't get to their jobs. The cumulative impact of repeated winter weather events adds up. Overall, February through the first few days of March is looking quite snowy for the Ohio Valley, and especially the Northeast. The Pacific Northwest is also going to become more active toward the middle of the month, after a frustratingly dry start to the winter season for many western areas. By next weekend, we're also watching the Pacific Northwest for increased activity, Sunday, February 8th, could bring higher elevation snow with lower elevation rain across Seattle, Portland, Medford, Eugene, down into Northern California, and perhaps into northwestern Nevada as well. The Pacific Northwest has been in a drought pattern for much of the winter. The ridge that's been parked over the western United States has kept storms away, directing them north into Canada or south into California. But as the pattern shifts in mid-February, that ridge is going to break down temporarily. When it does, a series of storms will move through the Pacific Northwest. For the mountains, this is great news. Ski resorts have been struggling with below normal snowpack. The Cascades, the Olympics, the mountains of British Columbia, all of them need snow, and it looks like they're gonna get it. For the lower elevations, it's more complicated. Seattle and Portland will see rain, not snow, but heavy rain that could cause flooding, especially if it falls on frozen ground. Rivers will rise, urban flooding could become an issue, and if temperatures drop just a few degrees, that rain could change to snow, creating travel chaos in cities that rarely see significant accumulation. The pattern shift that brings storms to the Pacific Northwest is the same pattern shift that sets up the mid-February storm for the central and eastern United States. It's all connected. The ridge breaks down in the west, the trough amplifies in the east, and storms develop along the boundary. This is the kind of active pattern that meteorologists watch closely because it has the potential to produce multiple significant weather events in rapid succession. Not just one storm, but a parade of systems, each one bringing its own impacts. So here's the bottom line for the week ahead. Monday brings light snow across the Great Lakes with minor travel impacts. Tuesday evening sees snow developing across Kentucky, West Virginia, and southern Ohio. Wednesday is the quiet day. Thursday and Friday bring a stronger clipper system with accumulating snow and the arrival of reinforcing Arctic air. Next weekend features dangerously cold wind chills, potentially reaching 40 below in parts of the Northeast. And looking further out, mid to late February shows strong signals for another significant winter storm across the central and eastern United States. This winter has already delivered historic cold and snow to many areas, and based on what I'm seeing in the pattern, we're nowhere close to being finished. The polar vortex split that's occurring right now is setting the stage for more cold and snow opportunities through the rest of the month. If you're a snow lover, February is shaping up to deliver. If you're tired of winter, I'm sorry to say, but there's no relief in sight for at least another few weeks. But here's what concerns me most. This isn't just about snow and cold. This is about a pattern that has locked in and refuses to break. The normal oscillations that usually bring variety to winter weather. The cycles between cold and mild, between snowy and dry. Those oscillations aren't happening. We're stuck. The atmosphere is stuck. And when the atmosphere gets stuck in an extreme configuration, the impacts compound. Infrastructure that was designed to handle occasional extreme events starts to fail when those events become persistent. Power grids strain, natural gas supplies dwindle, road salt runs out, snow removal budgets get exhausted, and people get tired of shoveling, tired of scraping ice off windshields, tired of bundling up in layers just to walk to the mailbox, tired of heating bills that keep climbing, tired of winter that won't end. This is the psychological toll of a relentless pattern, and it's something that doesn't show up in weather models or snowfall forecasts. But it's real, and it matters. Let me be practical about what you need to do to prepare for what's coming. Because understanding the meteorology is one thing, but taking action to protect yourself and your family is what actually matters. For the Great Lakes and Northeast, this weekend is critical. Make sure your heating system is working properly. If you heat with oil or propane, make sure your tank is full. If you use a wood stove, stock up on firewood now. The cold coming Saturday is the kind that tests heating systems to their limits. Protect your pipes. Let faucets drip slightly during the coldest nights. Open cabinet doors under sinks to allow warm air to circulate. If you have pipes in unheated areas, add insulation now before the cold hits. Stock up on essentials, not panic buying, just making sure you have enough food, water, and medications to last a week if you can't leave your house. Winter storms can close roads for days. Power outages can last even longer. Check on vulnerable neighbors. The elderly, people living alone, those with medical conditions. They're most at risk during extreme cold. A simple phone call or knock on the door can make a huge difference. For your vehicle, keep the gas tank at least half full. In extreme cold, fuel lines can freeze if the tank is too low. Make sure you have an ice scraper, snow brush, and emergency supplies including blankets, water, and snacks. If you lose power, know how to stay warm safely. Never use a gas stove or oven to heat your home. Never run a generator indoors or in an attached garage. Carbon monoxide poisoning kills people every winter during power outages. For those watching the mid-February storm potential, now is the time to prepare, not when the storm is 24 hours away. By then, stores will be crowded, supplies will be limited, and you'll be preparing in crisis mode instead of calmly and methodically. And for everyone, regardless of where you live, understand that this pattern is not normal. This is not typical winter variability. This is a persistent extreme that's testing systems and people in ways we haven't seen in years. The pattern will eventually break. Spring will come. But between now and then, we have weeks of winter left, weeks of cold, weeks of potential storms. And the more prepared you are, the better you'll handle whatever comes. As we close, I want you to understand the bigger picture here. What we're experiencing in February 2026 is not just a series of random winter storms. This is a persistent atmospheric pattern that has locked in place and shows little sign of breaking down anytime soon. The polar vortex split that began in January has not recovered the way it normally would. The jet stream remains stuck in a highly amplified configuration, and the result is wave after wave of Arctic air and storm systems affecting the same regions repeatedly. This kind of pattern persistence is what separates a rough winter from a historic winter. When you get one major storm, communities can recover. When you get storm after storm with no break in between, the cumulative impacts become overwhelming. Infrastructure gets stressed beyond its design limits. Emergency response resources get depleted. People get exhausted, and the risk of cascading failures increases with each successive event. The cold air is going to be firmly in place to support snow across the entire eastern United States through the first week of February. We are not warming up anytime soon. Multiple waves of Arctic air will continue reinforcing the cold, and each disturbance that comes through has the potential to produce accumulating snow. Stay warm, stay safe, and check on your neighbors, especially the elderly who may struggle with heating costs or mobility issues during these extended cold spells. I'll keep you updated as these systems evolve and as that mid-February potential becomes clearer. The countdown to the next major storm has begun. The pattern is set, and winter 2026 is far from finished.